Hey, it's Obs here with day 8 of the Murder at Castle Nathria card reveal season, and we actually got Xy'mox as one of the cards today, so we actually see the win condition, or at least the big payoff for the Relic deck for Demon Hunter. So, let's begin with the neutral cards, the first one being Sinfield Golem, which is a 7 cost 2 attack, 2 HP neutral minion that has the infuse 3 gain stats equal to the attack of the minions that infuse this. And then this is what the infused version looks like. The artwork on this is really cool. However, I don't think this card will see much play. It does have some potential in maybe some type of big paladin deck, similar to the one that I actually just put out today, or maybe into some type of giant druid deck that might also form around cards like this. However, generally speaking, I think this is a little bit too slow, and there's much better cards that you could play for 7 mana than something like this. Mutanus serves a much better purpose, and in theory, this is going to just be a 2/2 body most games, or you're going to be keeping it in your open hand and then only get a very small amount of stats off of some very weak minions. Either way, this is basically a 7 cost, do nothing when you play it except have a really big body on the board, and I don't think that's enough in the current metagame. Okay, so the next card revealed is Bog Beast, which is a 6 cost neutral minion with 3 attack, 6 HP, taunt, death rattle, summon a 2/4 Muckmare with taunt. This is basically just a slime that doesn't have any tags on it, it just has the taunt on it. Overall, I think this card is alright. It isn't the best card in the world. It's a little bit of a pack filler card overall. It can be used in some type of death rattle deck if you really want to get some advantage. Maybe Smokescreen will actually see some play now that we're getting a bunch more different types of death rattles, but I think there's still better options that cost a little bit less. A card like this, because it costs 6, is a little bit more difficult to want to use in a deck, especially in standard, where big minions have to do something a lot more important than just slamming down a 2/4 that they can easily get rid of. And because of this, I don't think this card will see much play. Maybe it will in Druid because of the location, but outside of that, I don't know. The next card revealed is Mage Card, which is a 2 cost neutral minion with 1 attack, 1 HP, Battlecry, summon a random 2 cost minion. Really good for Evolve Shaman and maybe some other type of deck that you want to swarm the field, but I think Evolve Shaman is going to be the home for a card like this. It might be good for Infuse, as it does give you 2 bodies instead of 1 for that. However, I don't think it'll see much play outside of Evolve Shaman, and I know for a fact if I did use it in another class, I would automatically always generate a Doomsayer, which is going to be very annoying when that randomly happens. Now for the next card, Sketchy Stranger, which is a neutral minion with 2 attack, 2 HP, that costs 2. Battlecry, discover a secret from another class. If Rogue actually sees a little bit more support for Secret Rogue, this will be perfect for them, especially because then you will have access to things like Ice Barrier or some of the other really good secrets that other classes have access to. And this can be easily abused in Rogue or any class that has a bunch of secrets, where you want either more defensive opportunities in the classes that don't usually have it, such as Hunter or Rogue, or more offensive secrets depending on what we actually see with the Rogue ones for Mage and Paladin. I think this one will probably see a lot of play in standard, especially if a secret deck is actually pushed. And now for Sin Runner. Sin Runner is a 5 cost neutral minion with 6 attack, 5 HP, with the beast tag, a death rattle, destroy a random enemy minion. I should mention here, and it's going to come up later in this video, the fact that all these cards are from the Shadowlands means none of these cards are considered undead, which is the reason why all these spectral beasts that we keep seeing actually have the beast tag. And this is just Revendreth's forces, basically. And this card is probably a pretty decent card. It reminds me a lot of Convincing Infiltrator, I think the card was called back in the day for Priest, that they used a bunch. This could be used in Death Rattle Druid if Death Rattle Druid becomes a really popular deck. Maybe Death Rattle Rogue as ways to remove big minions from your opponent's board, or even Death Rattle Priest, which might want to destroy your entire opponent's board while also doing a bunch of other things with their hero card they actually have access to. I think this will probably see some play in some type of deck. I just don't know if it's going to be an existing deck or something that is completely brand new to this set. Now for the next neutral card, Famished Fool, which is a 5-cost neutral minion with 3 attack, 5 HP, Battlecry, draw a card, infuse 4, draw 3 cards instead. So we are seeing a lot of token generating, so infuse 4 isn't the worst condition in the world, though in theory at the same time, on average is not going to draw you 3 cards. You're probably more well off using multicaster because most classes do have access to multiple schools of magic, but it really just depends if Token Hunter or some of the other token decks that are being supported in the set see a lot of play. But I am really not convinced that infuse is going to be a good keyword, but this is probably one of the better infused cards, so it probably will see play in something. It just matters on what the other support we see. Now for the next card, Forensic Duster, which is a 3-cost neutral minion, 3 attack, 4 HP, Battlecry, your opponent's minions cost 1 more next turn. In standard, I don't know how useful this is actually going to be. In theory, if combo decks actually rely on a bunch of minions, this should be really good, or even if you want to use this in a hand-controlling Warlock deck where you use Immolite, so you prevent your opponent from actually playing a bunch of cheap minions. That could be a use for a card like this, but as it currently stands in standard, I don't know if that will be enough to actually make this see play. It is a really cool neutral control tool depending on how you actually use it, and could in theory buy you an extra turn or two depending on how many minions your opponent actually use. Probably going to be an average card at best, but you never know. Alright, time for Druid's Card. Natural Causes, which is a 2-cost druid spell with the nature tag. Deal 2 damage, summon a 2/2 treant. This can go face, however, I think Moonbeam is actually just a better card if you want to do face damage, because this does clog up the board a little bit with the 2/2 treants, but it is the first treant support we are seeing for druids, so maybe we'll see some more. Could be really cool to actually try to make a treant druid deck work again, depending on what the support is, but I don't think this is going to fit into a miracle spell damage druid deck. I think it would be just a standalone own treant deck if we do see treant druid or token druid, depending on how it ends up shaping up. I don't think this is a horrible card per se. I just don't think it's better than some of the other options that serve a similar purpose right now, at least for more combo and wacky decks. Now for the next card revealed, which is Xy'mox. Xy'mox is a 8-cost legendary minion for Demon Hunter with 8 attack, 8 HP. Battlecry, discover and cast a relic, infuse 5, cast all 3 instead. And this is what he looks like, and this makes me think he is probably going to be a Venthyr Covenant ability. However, I could be completely wrong. It might just because the anima in Revendreth is red, so thus he just becomes red whenever he gets infused. I think this is a really cool payoff for Relic Demon Hunter. We also did get a little bit of clarity of how the individual relics actually work. The one that summons the adds is going to be increasing the add token's attack and HP for every time you empower the relics. The one that reduces the mana cost of the cards you draw is going to have a increase in the decrease of mana for each time it's empowered. And finally, the individual damage on the last relic is just going to increase for each time they are empowered. If these are the only cards that actually do anything with relics in Demon Hunter, I don't know if this will be enough to see much play, but I do think it will spawn a new variant of Questline Demon Hunter, just because of the fact that the draw power one is incredibly good and allows you to have a lot of mana cheat, which should allow you to do some really funny and wacky combos that you might not normally be able to do, or serve as a replacement to Skull of Gul'dan, which is actually a pretty cool thing for Demon Hunter as a class. Either way, I'm looking forward to actually using this, even if it isn't powerful at the start. I really wish I know if there was additional support for this type of card, or if there wasn't. I think the infuse mechanic is going to be something that might just flop right away because of the fact that you can't generate too many minions for a lot of classes, but in a token generating deck, this might actually fit right at home. Okay, now time for Demon Hunter's second card, Bibliomite, which is a 2 cost, 4 attack, 4 HP minion with the battle cry. Choose a card in your hand, shuffle it into your deck. This card is probably not that good for standard. However, in theory, you could use it in combination with the quest line for Demon Hunter to shuffle a card into your deck, so you could actually get a discount on it once you complete the quest line reward. Though at the same time, a 4/4 on turn 2 might be enough for someone to actually want to run this card, and it does make Maze Runner a lot better of a card since this is a really high roll. Imagine getting 5/5 worth of stats on turn 2 because you high rolled into this. Most people are just going to be frustrated at it and won't have answers to it. But again, I don't know if a 4/4 is enough to net you one less card in your hand unless you're running this in some type of questline deck overall. The nice thing about choose a card allows you to choose from 3 cards instead of just a random card in your hand, which makes it a little bit better. But overall, I don't think this one will see much play. And now for Hunter's card. Baddie Guess, which is a 1 cost Hunter minion with 1 attack, 1 HP. Death Rattle, summon a 2/1 bat. The 2/1 bat has the beast tag and nothing else on it. This is probably decent for a token hunter deck, as we will see more support of this in the next card. But as it currently stands, token hunter doesn't have too many win conditions. You could in theory use Sire de Nathrius as your win condition for that type of deck, but that requires you to draw into it pretty quickly, and this does also dilute your pool with Revive Pet if you do use Revive Pet in that same type of deck. But token hunter you probably won't. If we see some more support for token hunter, this card will probably see a lot of play, and the Fool that we saw earlier that drew into 3 cards if 4 minions died while it's in your hand actually is a lot easier to accomplish in hunter because of this card and the next one, which is Frenzied Fangs. 2 cost hunter spell, summon 2/1 bats, infuse, give them +1/+2. This is actually really good for token hunter. However, currently you could in theory run a little Naga package instead and be in a much better position, because there is the one spell that gives you 2 3/3s if you have played a Naga while it was in your hand. I can't remember the name of the spell right now, forgive me for that, but this is on turn 2 instead of turn 3. So if in theory you can get enough cheap minions out so you can actually use this on turn 2, I don't know how you would possibly do it, but in theory if you could, this could be actually pretty decent with the stat line, just because it's 3/4 worth of stats on 2 bodies, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to deal with it. I think this one will probably see a lot of play if token hunter actually sees some competitive viability, and I'm assuming the covenant ability and the covenant suspect are both going to support this, as we did already see a little bit of token support in the form of Huntmaster, but you never know. And now for some cards that are going to confuse a lot of people, but is really cool to see this lore make its way into Hearthstone. Spirit Poacher is a 2 cost hunter minion with 2 attack, 2 HP. Battlecry, summon a random dormant wild seed. The first dormant seed is Fox Spirit Wild Seed, which is a 1 cost minion. Dormant for 1 turn, give rush. The second one is Bear Spirit Wild Seed, a dormant for 2 turns with taunt with 2/5 worth of stats. And then finally Stag Spirit Wild Seed, dormant for 3 turns. When this awakens, equipped a 4/2 great bow. So these were the cards I was mentioned before that are going to confuse a lot of people. While these do say spirit on them, they technically aren't spirits because they aren't actually dead. Shadowlands is a really weird lore to go into, but just believe me when I say this, they're technically not dead. They're just forms that beings that get sent to Ardenweald, which is the home of the Night Fae, take, and the wild seeds are the things that the Night Fae actually protect and grow in order to allow nature entities so they can be reincarnated. Overall, I think this card is probably a really good card, especially given the fact that a 4/2 weapon with a 5/4 body is insane. However, you do have to wait 3 turns for something like that, so it might be a little less consistent for something there, but the Fox Spirit and the Bear Spirit could in theory be really good, though it does mean you're going to wait for an answer for a turn or two depending on which wild seed you actually put out on your board. These are supposedly the only 3 wild seeds, but there will be more support for the wild seed mechanic, and I'm assuming it's probably going to be shared between Hunter and Druid, depending on how they want to actually shape it up. And this probably will see some play. It's a decent body by itself, but if you can actually high roll into the later wild seeds, you're in a really good position. And now for Mage's Card. Suspicious Alchemist, which is a 1-cost mage minion with 1 attack, 3 HP. Battle Cry, discover a spell. If your opponent guesses your choice, they gain a copy. This is supposedly going to be taking place on your opponent's turn when they actually get to guess, just because I'm assuming Hearthstone isn't built to allow your opponent to have any type of interaction between you and your opponent on your opponent's turn, and that's the easiest solution they could come up with. It's cool to see some of these cards actually get some support, as it is a really unique mechanic that we haven't seen in Hearthstone yet. This is definitely one of those cards that you can play a lot of mind games with, especially given the fact that there are some mage cards that just don't work for other classes, such as Wildfire or something else that might be synergistic with any other class. So technically this doesn't have to be a mage spell that it can randomly generate. It could in theory randomly generate a spell from another class, and even if you do decide to choose one of the worse options, then you could in theory just prevent your opponent from getting any advantage, though most of the time you probably are going to want to choose the best option even if it gives your opponent some type of advantage, because in theory it could generate you some threat that you really need right now, and it might allow you to actually come back. I don't know if this will see play. It's a really funny card to actually see, but again, it just depends on how well your opponent can guess what card you actually pick and if you want to actually risk giving them any type of advantage. And now for the next card revealed, Promotion. Promotion is a 1-cost spell for Paladin that gives a Silver Hand recruit +3/+3. So this basically means on turn 4 you can have a 7/7 if you really feel like it, if your opponent doesn't get rid of whatever recruit you do spawn on turn 2, which is kind of cool. I don't know if this will see much play. It is a really good finisher if you can actually generate additional copies of this. It is cheap enough where it might see play just because it will be a really good aggro tool and might actually push some type of aggro questline Paladin deck, given the fact that we have seen a lot of other Silver Hand recruit support in the set. And honestly, I'm really happy to see this. The only questline that hasn't really gotten any support after the initial batch is the rogue one at this point, which is a little bit sad to say, but I guess they did get the one Onyxia layer card, so maybe that was their way to try to push that deck forward. It would be cool to actually see SI7 rogue actually get more support, but I don't think this will be the set for it. Overall, this is probably just going to be a decent card. Now for the next one, which is Priest's second legendary, the Harvester of Envy, which is a 3-cost legendary minion with 4 attack, 3 HP. After you play a card copied from the opponent, steal the original. If we see additional support for this, this is really, really good. However, if we don't see additional support, this might actually just fall flat and not see much play. It does make the Caravan for Priest a lot better than it currently is, and there are ways to actually generate a bunch of other cards that are from your opponent's deck, which is actually pretty cool. So maybe a deck like this will actually form around. There is enough potential here. It just needs a few extra cards, including something that maybe reduces the cost of cards that you copy from your opponent's deck by a certain amount or something like that. That would be the main support that I would be looking forward to in the future, or even a way to duplicate this card since he doesn't have a death rattle or anything else. Thus he might be a little bit more difficult to actually duplicate after the initial one dies, and might be a little bit of a harder minion to use early on in the game. But as it currently stands, I don't think this card will see much play. And now for Rogue's new card, which is a big shock to me. Secret Rogue support. Ghastly Gravedigger is a 3-cost rogue minion with 4 attack, 3 HP. Battle Cry, if you control a secret, choose a card in your opponent's hand, shuffle it into their deck. So if we see a bunch of new secrets support this set, this might be a really good card. And honestly, I can't wait to actually see some of that support, because Secret Rogue seems to be one of those decks that they push here and there, but every time they do, it is either really strong or really weak. And I really do like a more control style type of deck for Rogue. I don't know what secrets you could currently print for Rogue that might not be too broken. I'd assume it would be for a more control style deck, and maybe you could make a hand control Rogue deck using this card, some secrets, a bunch of pirates, and the snake from Throne of the Tides, all of which interact with your opponent's hand in some way. It's interesting to me that we're seeing a lot of hand control style cards actually be printed now. I'm really curious of which deck and which class is actually going to win out in the end, because currently as it stands, I think Warlock has the best package through the curses and immolation, but I think both Demon Hunter and Rogue have a lot of potential for a very similar style deck. Same thing can be said for Priest. Either way, I really do want to see a deck like this work. It might be really frustrating to play against, but it is a fresh of breath air when it comes to Hearthstone, as hand control isn't really something that Hearthstone has historically had. They've had a few cards here and there throughout history. Trust me, one of my first videos on this channel was a hand control questline Demon Hunter deck that was absolutely terrible, but it was a lot of fun to try to make that work, and it's been something that I've been wanting to try to make work ever since that video. But hopefully with some of these new cards, we will see one of those decks actually be playable, at least for a short period of time before it actually gets nerfed into the ground. All right, time for the final card revealed today, which is Serrated Bone Spike, which is a 2-cost spell for Rogue. Deal 3 damage to a minion. If it dies, your next card this turn costs 2 less. So this is Rogue's Covenant ability. It goes along with Draka. Really cool to see. I didn't know how they were actually going to do something like this. When it comes to Bone Spike, it's a permanent debuff on your opponent. So this doesn't actually translate the WoW spell that well, but it is really cool artwork, and it does support Miracle Rogue, which we have seen a lot of support for. And this card probably could allow you to play an additional card or two depending on how much mana discount you can actually get, thus allowing your Draka or your location cards to actually be even bigger than before. I don't see a world where this doesn't see play. Sure, it costs 2, but it's still really, really good. Any type of mana cheat is always going to be good in Rogue. It doesn't matter, or even in any class. There's so much possibilities that you can use this card for, and again, I can't see a world where this doesn't see play. Alright, so those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know down below which ones you're looking most forward to, and which ones you think will actually get more support. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, bye bye.